The black dress clings uncomfortably to my skin as I stand before my son's small casket. Everything about this moment feels wrong. Peter should be beside me, holding my hand, bearing the weight of this unbearable loss. Parents aren't meant to outlive their children. And yet, while I'm saying goodbye to our son, my husband is basking in the Hawaiian sun with his mistress. I know because the proof arrived 10 minutes ago, a photo sent to my phone. Peter, sun-kissed and grinning, a drink in one hand, his other arm wrapped around a blonde who couldn't be older than 30. Beneath the image, a message. Thought you should know what your husband is really doing today. A concerned friend. My mother's grip tightens on my arm. Sophie, you're shaking. I shove the phone into my purse, my fingers trembling. Around us, hushed voices ripple through the gathering. They know. Of course they know. In a town this size, secrets don't stay buried, and Peter's absence at his own son's funeral will fuel gossip for months. I'll kill him, my mother mutters, her voice thick with fury. That spineless bastard. Thomas's small coffin glows beneath the chapel lights, covered in a blanket of white roses, his favorite. He was fascinated by the way flowers could change color with food dye. We spent hours in the hospital watching pale petals bloom into deep blues and purples, just to make him smile through the pain. Peter's parents linger at the back of the room, their expressions carefully blank. Linda, my mother-in-law, catches my eye for a brief moment before looking away. She knows. She probably knew all along. The funeral director approaches, clipboard in hand. Are we ready to begin? I want to scream that nothing about this is right, that I will never be ready. Thomas should be at home, curled up on the couch playing video games, pleading for 5 more minutes before bed. But instead, I swallow the lump in my throat, nod, and take my seat in the front pew. My phone buzzes again. Another message. This time from Peter. Sorry I couldn't make it. Important business meeting. We'll make it up to you. The fury that surges through me is unlike anything I've ever known. It burns through the grief, leaving something sharper in its place. Something cold, ruthless. I delete the message and sit up straighter. Let him enjoy his tropical escape with his cheap affair. Let him think he's untouchable. Let him believe I'll crumble like a grieving widow should. He's wrong. I'm going to destroy him. Not just for abandoning us. Not just for missing our son's funeral. But for every selfish decision, every betrayal, every moment he placed himself above his family. Piece by piece, I'll make sure he understands what true loss feels like. The reception after. Thomas's funeral feels like a performance, with everyone playing their assigned roles. My mother-in-law Linda corners me. In the kitchen of my parents' house, her perfectly manicured hand gripping my arm. Just a bit too tight, Peter's going through a difficult time, she says, voice dripping with manufactured sympathy. We all process grief differently. I shake off her grip, focusing on arranging cookies that nobody will eat onto a serving plate. Is that what we're calling it now? Processing grief in Hawaii. Her lips thin into a sharp line. You always did have a flair for dramatics, Sophie. Perhaps if you'd been more understanding during Thomas's illness. Don't you dare, my mother's voice cuts through the kitchen like a blade. She stands in the doorway, and I've never seen such fury in her eyes. Don't you dare blame my daughter for your son's cowardice. Linda's mask slips for just a moment, revealing something ugly underneath. Margaret, this is hardly the time. It's exactly the time. My mother steps closer, and despite being shorter than Linda, she somehow towers over her. While my daughter was sleeping in hospital chairs for months, where was Peter? While my grandson was fighting for his life, where were you and Robert? With your family support. The sound of breaking china makes us all jump. I've crushed one of the cookies in my fist, crumbs scattering across the counter. In the living room, I can hear my father asking someone about his newspaper for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. We contributed financially, Linda says, stiffly, which is more than I can say for some people. My mother laughs, but it's a harsh sound. Oh yes, your precious money. Tell me, Linda, does Peter know about the trust fund, yet the one Robert's father left specifically for his great-grandchildren? Linda's face goes white. It's the first time I've heard about any trust fund, and clearly that information wasn't meant for my ears. That's a family matter, she hisses. Thomas was family, I say quietly, the pieces clicking into place. He was the only great-grandchild, which means that money was his. The silence in the kitchen grows thick with unspoken accusations. Linda's perfectly composed facade cracks just enough for me to see the elation behind her eyes. All those times she discouraged Peter from spending time with Thomas, all those convenient business trips she arranged. During his hospital stays, it wasn't just emotional distance, it was strategic. I think you should leave, my mother says, but Linda's already retreating, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor like tiny hammers, driving nails into my growing rage. I turn to my mother. Tell me everything about that trust fund. Her smile is grim. Oh, sweetheart, that's just the beginning of what I have to tell you. 3 days after the funeral, I find the life insurance papers in Peter's home office, not in a drawer or filing cabinet, but scattered across his desk like fallen leaves, forms, receipts, and a post-it note with a call summary policy scrolled in his hasty handwriting. My hands shake as I rifle through the documents. Thomas's why taken out 6 months after his diagnosis is for $2 million. The beneficiary line catches my eye, and Peter Thompson's sole recipient. My name has been crossed out. The change dated just weeks before Thomas died. My phone buzzes, a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Coffee shop on Main now. Samantha. The name hits me like a slap. Sam, the woman from the Hawaii photo. The same Sam from the post-it note. I find her exactly where she said she'd be, looking expensive in a way that speaks of someone else's money. She doesn't stand when I approach, just stirs her coffee with calculated precision. I'm surprised you came, she says, not looking up. I'm surprised you had the nerve to contact me. Now she does look up, and there's something hard in her eyes. Peter's been promising me things, big things, but now he's not returning my calls. What kind of things? A fresh start, a new life together. She laughs, but it's bitter. Funded by your son's insurance money. The world tilts sideways. I grip the edge of the table, my knuckles white. He told you about that? He tells me everything. She pulls out her phone, scrolls through messages, including how he made sure you'd never see a penny of it, his mother's idea. Apparently she never thought you deserve their family money. Why are you telling me this? Samantha leans forward. Because he's playing both of us. That policy, he promised to split it with me, but I did some digging. He's got gambling debts, Sophie, big ones, the kind that make people desperate. My throat feels like sandpaper. You're lying. She slides her phone across the table. Text messages, bank statements, photos, a digital trail of betrayal spanning months. Peter and Linda plotting, Peter and Samantha planning, Peter at casinos, at loan sharks, at places he should never have been while our son was dying. I'm not the villain here, Samantha says quietly. I'm just another mark in his con, but unlike you, I've got nothing left to lose. I stand up, my chair scraping against the floor. You're wrong about one thing. I've got nothing left to lose either, not anymore. She smiles, and it's all teeth. Then maybe we should help each other. I look at her, this woman who helped destroy my family, and realize she might be exactly what I need, a weapon aimed straight at Peter's heart. I find my father sitting in Thomas's room holding one of his stuffed animals, the worn penguin that went with him to every hospital stay. He looks up at me with that familiar, confused expression, but today there's something different in his eyes. You look just like your mother when she's planning something dangerous, he says, his voice clearer than it's been in months. I sink onto Thomas's bed, the mattress still holding the indent where he spent his final weeks. Dad, do you remember what we talked about yesterday? He strokes the penguin's matted fur. No, but I remember Thomas telling me about the trust fund right before his brow furrows. Was that real? My heart stops. What trust fund, Dad? The one Peter's father wanted to discuss. Robert came here when Thomas was sick, said something about protecting family assets. He looks around the room, momentarily lost. Did I dream that I take his hand, forcing myself to stay gentle despite my racing pulse? No, Dad. When exactly was this? Your mother was at the hospital with Thomas. Robert brought papers. He squeezes my hand. Suddenly his grip surprisingly strong. I didn't sign them. They felt wrong, like when you smell smoke but can't see the fire. The pieces click together. Robert's unexpected visit, Linda's careful manipulations, Peter's sudden interest in our family's property holdings. They weren't just after Thomas's insurance money. They were trying to secure everything while my father was vulnerable. My phone buzzes, a message from Samantha. Peter's back meeting with his lawyer tomorrow. Something about property transfers. I should have protected you better, my father says, his voice cracking. Both of you did protect us, Dad, by Not signing those papers, I stand my decision. Crystallizing, and now it's my turn. He holds out the penguin. Thomas knew you. Know about Peter, he told me not to. Worry about you because you're stronger than everyone thinks. His eyes clouded. Over who's Peter, the familiar pain of watching him slip away mingles with a new determination. I take the penguin, its soft weight anchoring me to this moment. My phone buzzes again. Uncle Peter, this time, found something in the property records. Come to my office. Now I kiss my father's forehead. I have to go, Dad, but I promise you they won't take anything else from this family. He smiles vaguely, already lost in whatever fragment of memory has claimed him, but his earlier words echo in my mind like smoke without fire. They thought they could use my father's condition to steal our legacy. Instead, they've given me exactly what I need. Proof of their intentions. The penguin goes into my bag, a reminder of what I'm fighting for and why losing isn't an option. Uncle Peter's office is a fortress of filing cabinets and legal documents, but what he shows me isn't in any drawer. It's on his computer screen, a series of property transfers dating back to when Thomas first got sick. They've been planning this for months, Peter says, scrolling through document after document. Shell companies, hidden accounts, all leading back to Peter and his parents. My fingers trace the dates on screen. Each one corresponds to a hospital stay, a chemotherapy session, a day when I was too focused on keeping Thomas alive to notice what Peter was doing. Here's the kicker, Peter continues, pulling up another file. They used Thomas's medical bills to justify emergency sales of your joint assets. Everything's been quietly moving into accounts you can't access. A knock at the door makes us both jump. It's Samantha, looking less polished than at the coffee shop. Sorry to interrupt, but Peter's meeting got moved up. He's at the lawyer's office now. Peter glances at his watch. That's not possible. The meeting scheduled for Linda changed it. Samantha cuts and they're signing everything over today. Once that's done, she lets the sentence hang. My phone buzzes. A text from Peter. We need to talk about the house coming by later. The house, my parents' house, where my father still lives, where Thomas spent his final days. The property that's been in my family for 3 generations. Show me everything, I tell Peter, my voice steady despite the rage building inside. Every document, every transfer, every lee. For the next hour we piece it together. Peter's gambling debts hidden behind corporate facades, Linda's systematic dismantling of our joint assets, Robert's attempts to manipulate my father into signing away his property rights. There's one more thing, Samantha says quietly. She pulls out her phone, plays a recording. Peter's voice fills the room, discussing with Linda how to handle my father's condition, how to use his dementia to their advantage. The recording ends in the silence. I hear Thomas's voice in my memory. Promise you won't let them take our home, Mom. We can stop them, Peter says, but we have to move now. I stand gathering the documents we've printed. No, I'm not just going to stop them. I pull Thomas's penguin from my bag, set it on Peter's desk. I'm going to take everything back, and then I'm going to make sure they never hurt another person again. Samantha's lips curve into a smile. I was hoping you'd say that because I know exactly where they've hidden the real estate contracts. Get your coat, I tell Peter. We're going to pay Peter's lawyer a visit, and this time I'm not leaving until I have what I came for. The penguin watches with its worn button eyes as we head out. 3 unlikely allies united by betrayal, moving toward a confrontation that will change everything. The lawyer's office feels like a trap. Peter sits across the conference table, Linda and Robert flanking him like guards. The stack of documents between us might as well be a wall. You're making this harder than it needs to be, Peter says, sliding the papers toward me. Just sign for Thomas. My hand clenches around the USB drive in my pocket, the one containing every fraudulent document, every recorded conversation, every piece of evidence Peter helped me gather. Don't you dare say his name. Linda leans forward, her perfectly manicured nails tapping the table. Sophie, dear, you're clearly not thinking clearly. Grief can make people show them. Samantha's voice cuts through the room as she strides, and Peter right behind her. Show them what we found. Peter's face drains of color. What is she doing here? I connect the USB to the lawyer's computer, and the projector flickers to life. Document after document appears on the screen. Property transfers, falsified Signatures, recorded conversations about using my father's condition to steal our family home. It's over, I say, but Peter's smile stops me cold. Actually, he pulls out another folder. There's something you should see. First, the documents inside make my blood freeze. Photographs of Peter meeting with known criminals, bank statements showing suspicious transfers from my mother's accounts, emails suggesting tax fraud dating back years. Imagine how devastating this would be for your family. Linda says softly, your uncle's business ruined your mother, implicated your father, would have to leave that lovely home of his. Where would he go in his condition? Peter starts to speak, but Peter cuts him off. We can make all of this go away, or we can destroy everything you have left. Your choice. The room spins. Every piece of evidence I gathered, every plan I made turns to ash in my mouth. They weren't just after money. They were setting up an insurance policy against exactly this moment. You have until tomorrow morning, Peter says. Standing, choose wisely. They file out, leaving me alone with Peter and Samantha. The projector still cycles through my evidence, now useless against their counter threat. They won't stop. Samantha whispers they'll take everything piece by piece until there's nothing left. I stare at the last photo on screen. Thomas in the hospital, Peter conspicuously absent. As always, my son fought until his last breath, never giving up despite impossible odds. No, I say, my voice steadier than I feel. They won't take anything else because we're not playing their game anymore. Peter touches my shoulder. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time to stop trying to beat them at their own game. We need to change the rules entirely. The lights flicker, casting shadows across the evidence of both our crimes, and there's tomorrow morning suddenly feels very far away. My mother's kitchen has always been a sanctuary, but tonight it's a war room. Files and documents cover every surface as Margaret spreads out what she calls her insurance policy. I've been tracking Peter's schemes since Thomas's first hospital stay, she says, revealing years of surveillance, photos, bank statements, and recorded conversations. I knew something wasn't right when he started pressuring Henry about the property titles. Peter picks up a document, his eyes widening. These transfers, they're all legally binding, but they're not what Peter thinks they are. A knock at the door makes us all free. Samantha slips in her designer outfit, replaced by casual clothes, her phone recording. There on their way. Linda convinced Peter that tonight's the night to force your hand. Perfect timing, my mother says, and there's something in her voice I've never heard before. Still wrapped in silk. Show her. Peter, my uncle, pulls up documents on his tablet. Every property Peter thought he'd secured, every asset he tried to steal has been legally transferred, not to him, but to a trust in Thomas's name with me as executive. How I whisper, your father had more clear days than they realized. Margaret says we made sure every transfer was properly witnessed and notarized during those moments. Peter's been so busy creating fake documents he never bothered to check the real ones. Headlights sweep across the window's car. Door slam. Remember, Peter says quickly. Let them think they're in control. Peter bursts in without knocking. Linda and Robert right behind him. He's holding the folder of threats against my family. His smile triumphant. Time's up, he announces. Have you made your decision? I stand, letting my hands shake, playing the role they expect you, and I'll sign whatever you want. Linda's smile mirrors her son's. I knew you'd see reason. Actually, Samantha steps forward, her phone still recording. I think you should see this first. The color drains from Peter's face as she plays a recording. Him confessing to insurance fraud, to manipulating my father, to planning everything while Thomas was dying. But it's not just his voice on the recording. Linda's there too, orchestrating every move. You set us up, Peter snarls, lunging forward, but Peter blocks his path. No, I say quietly, you set yourself up. Every fake document you created, every illegal transfer you attempted, they all leave a paper trail, one that's already been sent to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Linda reaches for the folder of threats, but my mother snatches it first, looking for these. Funny thing about evidence, it works both ways, especially when it's been carefully documented by a retired legal secretary who spent 40 years learning how to protect family assets. Peter's face contorts. You can't. I already have. I cut him off. The only question now is how far You want this to go because I'm ready to. Lose everything to make sure you lose. More the silence that follows feels like justice. The morning frost crunches under my feet as I make my way through the cemetery. Thomas's headstone stands clean and bright, the marble catching early sunlight. I brush away fallen leaf, setting down the worn penguin stuffed animal against the stone. You'd be proud of your grandmother, I say softly. She outsmarted them all. Peter and Linda face federal charges for financial fraud. Robert turned state's evidence, finally finding his voice after decades of passive compliance. The trust fund Thomas's rightful inheritance will go to the pediatric cancer ward where he spent his final months. He's at peace now, my father says, and I startle. I hadn't heard him approach. He stands beside me, more lucid than he's been in weeks. Thomas told me, so Dad, you're having a good day. He shakes his head. No, before the night he came to me, said not to worry about you anymore, said you'd find your strength. He touches the penguin's matted fur. Funny thing about strength, sometimes it looks like revenge, but it's really just love wearing armor. The weight of everything the battles won, the family protected, the justice served, settles around my shoulders like a familiar coat. Not comfortable exactly, but necessary. Samantha left town after providing her testimony, but not before leaving me a final note. Some victories don't feel like winning. She was right. This doesn't feel like triumph. It feels like survival. My phone buzzes. Peter updating me on the last of Peter's assets being frozen. I silence it without responding. That chapter's finished, ready to go home. I ask my father. He stares at the headstone, something shifting behind his eyes. Did I tell you about Thomas visiting? Yes, Dad, just now. He pauses, then smiles. Good, wouldn't want to forget that. As we turn to leave, movement catches my eye. A monarch butterfly landing on Thomas's headstone, its wings catching the sun like stained glass. My father reaches for it, but I catch his hand. Let it be, I say, understanding finally washing over me. Revenge wasn't the answer. I needed it. Was this protecting what remains, honoring what was lost, finding peace in the spaces between justice and mercy? The butterfly takes flight, dancing on the morning breeze. My father watches it go, then turns to me with clear eyes. Shall we have pancakes? Thomas always loved pancakes. Yes, I say, taking his arm. He did. We leave the penguin standing guard, a silent sentinel against the marble. Behind us, the butterfly spirals upward, free and unburdened, showing us how to let go.
Thank you for watching Sophie's story until the end. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share, and subscribe for more untold realities.